Clerk, please call the roll.
Trustee Cole?
Here.
Trustee Fisher?
Here.
Trustee Freed?
Here.
Trustee Hatch?
Here.
Trustee Reppin?
Here. Thank you. Next on our agenda are the non-agenda items and visitor for public comments. The Committee of the Whole allocates 15 minutes during this item for those individuals who would like the opportunity to address the Committee of the Whole on any matter not listed on the agenda. Each person addressing the Committee of the Whole is asked to limit their comments to a maximum of 3 minutes. Do we have any comments in the room? And I see none. Do we have anybody online?
No, sir.
And so moving on to the next item, that would be our general business. And the Committee of the Whole will entertain requests from anyone present to modify the order of business to be conducted. Did we receive any requests?
No.
And so moving on to the first item, that would be the consideration of the minutes from the May 8th, 2023 Committee of the Whole meeting. Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
Moved.
A second?
Second.
Thank you. Are there any changes or comments? Seeing none, clerk, please call the roll.
Voice vote.
It's a voice vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Thank you very much. The motion passes. Next item on our menu for tonight is the discussion regarding LGBTQ plus Pride flag request. I had a few discussions in our community about our June proclamation designating June 2023 LGBTQ Pride Month, being the request of Mrs. Christine Claywater, I hope I say that name correctly, and Mrs. Sue O'Ray, and the display of the display of flags on village property. I was made aware that the LGBTQ community consider a community to be safe and welcoming when considering the display of rainbow flags to be, for example, on institution signage. So for example, going around town, that would be Grace Church, you might have noticed that, or I was told the public library. Our Lake Bluff 2023 strategic plan states on page 3, guiding principles, that in Lake Bluff, we will take personal responsibility for the quality of our community, act with integrity, and in the best interest of all, demonstrate kindness, neighborliness, and concern for others, and the fourth bullet being be inclusive, welcoming, and open-minded, and followed by interact with respect and civility in all circumstances, embrace a positive, forward-looking orientation, cherish our history, culture, and legacy for excellence. So reading the agenda for tonight, where it states, staff anticipates the COW discussion of the request and alternatives and possible combination thereof as outlined below, and directing staff accordingly for A, maintain current level of celebration, and so continue designating June Pride Month by proclamation. B, adopt a policy that includes Pride flag. The village board may choose to adopt a flag policy like the City of Des Plaines or the Village of Buffalo Grove that lists the Pride flag as being an authorized flag for display on municipality-owned property. Or C, consider other ways to celebrate Pride Month. And I will stop right here, opening the floor for discussion.
I was pleased to see both correspondence from community members. When we've talked about it, I think there's nothing more crucial than not just saying that we are committed to inclusivity and diversity, but showing that we are, because words only go so far, right? And I think these letters from community members perfectly reflect why communities choose to do flags. It's a visual representation to those who are othered that they are in a safe place and are welcome here. And And I'm very excited about the idea of taking the next step for next year. I can stop there, but that's where I stand. I think that's where our neighbors are. You drive through all of our neighboring communities and you see all of our neighboring communities have flags up, so.
But we have two possibilities going forward, going next, as you say. So we had A, and you said, no, we should go to B or C. And B being, we create a policy that includes a pride flag, and we choose, this is our flag, and we choose to put this flag out as a village, or we consider other ways to celebrate Pride Month. And there needs to be, we need to have a policy according that is where either we put our own flag following the document that was included in the package, or we basically open the putting up a flag to the community for personal flags,
Right.
literally.
Mr. President, could I ask the members of the board to move the microphones down to the, thank you.
Sorry.
And I'm open to hear what my, fellow trustees have to say about that, but I think in many ways, the buck starts and stops with us. And I think I'd like to see that the leadership in our community start with supporting its community members. I also have some concerns about what kind of doors we open if we are placing the onus completely on community members to step forth, meaning other organizations or requests.
I support policy B, adopting a policy that includes the pride flag. Primarily, I think it is important to show support for an not underprivileged, but often overlooked community. And as Trustee Fisher pointed out, are other villages around here, and we're surrounded by communities that do support them, and I think it's important.
Thank you.
I also support putting a policy in place that addresses the flag. I was on the Metro train this weekend on the way to Chicago, and the community support for the Pride Parade was evident. As I rode through each of the towns, you could see the flags up in almost every town that we went through. I don't remember exactly, but I do remember seeing it in Wilmette, as well as others. And I think adopting a policy is a good approach.
Thank you.
So, Drew, can I just ask, in terms of communities that have adopted the flag in part of their policy or is it all of our neighboring communities? Is that accurate?
We have not pulled all the neighboring, I'm not aware that Lake Forest has. I'm not certain about Libertyville or Green Oaks or North Chicago or even Highland Park. I'm not certain.
Well, because of flag policy, I can't remember exactly what
Yeah,
it is.
but that could be, we just took, here's a handful of communities that we know have policies. Some of them are represented by Rod Friedman as well, so.
And Highwood does
Highwood,
have
most
a-
certainly, yes.
Yeah.
I'm being dramatic by saying all of our communities, but when I say all of our communities, I think what I want to say is that's where our country and the climate of our country and the majority of citizens have arrived.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Yeah, my personal values are completely aligned with it. I would, love to have a pride flag and probably on my front door.
Yeah.
But in representing the community and knowing that at times it can be divisive, I want to make sure that we do our diligence relative to the community. And I think there's an element of fairness, too, of the flag, of having a policy and understanding what all of the options are for flags, and not just looking at this in isolation, but looking at what do other communities include. And I know there were two examples included, but I think it's incumbent on the staff to put together a policy to float the idea of the pride flag being in that policy, but to also explore what other flags would be in that policy and to really just take a holistic look. So my personal values are very aligned to it. I'd love to do it, but I want to do our homework.
So we have two options, Drew, if I can. We opened the flag, we opened the possibility of flag from any member in this community. That's one alternative. The second alternative is we put a flag of our choosing, that is a flag that belongs to the village. So we would acquire a pride flag, whatever type we decide, but it would be our flag and we would put it up. So I think the policy needs to make a choice. We need to make a choice for that policy.
Can you, the first version is that we encourage the community to celebrate Pride Month, but the village doesn't officially have a flag?
I mean, I think encouraging others to celebrate is always an alternative, right, to add onto the village's proclamation.
Yeah.
And then you can keep building. That's why I think the memo, I attempted to say that this was, you can mix and match and do, there's countless ways to celebrate. So if you wanted to do a flag policy that would be inclusive of the pride flag and maybe others, we could bring an exhaustive list of, we can examine other communities' flags policies and see what other flags do they include, and you can just start eliminating or adding to a list, either way. We can bring a policy, there's the example, we can write it for Lake Bluff and bring it to a future meeting.
So, Drew, one option would be, please put to staff, would be please put a flag policy together,
Yep.
including the pride flag. Another request of staff could be put an alternative way to celebrate Pride Month in a visual way with, and what are the options there?
Sure, yes, yeah.
Can I
Absolutely. Go ahead.
just put a little finer point on the flag policies? And paragraph 7 of the memo kind of tries to get into this, although it's one paragraph and it's kind of a complicated subject.
Yeah.
But if you look at, as an example, just to make the point, the City of Des Plaines policy is, those are city flagpoles, those are city flags. The City of Boston had a policy where, here's our flagpole, you can apply, private groups can apply to fly the flag, whatever flag, on our flagpoles. And over 20 years, they never rejected a flag. So it became a public forum, where at that point, after 20 years and never rejecting a flag, they lost the ability to say no
Right.
to that next flag. And that's why the Supreme Court rejected 9-0 their effort to say no to a flag
Right.
once they had opened it up. The distinction is that the government, it's kind of an odd, it's not odd to me, but sometimes it's odd to others, the government has a right to speak. The village of Lake Bluff has the right to speak, and the First Amendment does not govern the village's speech. The First Amendment protects private people from government restriction on private speech. But the government can speak however it wants to speak. So if the City of Des Plaines flag policy and others say, here's how we're gonna speak, and these are the flags that we're gonna own on our flagpole and that we're gonna have, you can broaden that list of flags that you're gonna own. I would say that to the extent it ever gets so broad that it's basically like any flag, then you may start getting, is this really government speech, or is it kind of becoming a public forum? But if it's relatively limited, then courts will generally say the First Amendment doesn't even apply, and it's just the village making its own decisions about what it wants to do, just like you speak when you adopt a proclamation. That's government speech. So I just want to make, when you start to talk about private flags, that's a key distinction.
Great, thanks.
And that's what I don't want to get into the business of. I don't want to create an environment where we have to make decisions about whose private flag we are or are not flying. I feel like that is not going to be fun for anyone. So, I think a policy is important, and I think, I don't know if, I've read the Shirtliff, is that it? Shirtliff v. Boston case. I think, when it came out, I remember thinking, oof, like they kind of stepped in it.
They did.
And we don't need to go in the way of that ruling. So I'd like us to be thoughtful and absolutely do homework about how we create policy. But I'm not super interested in having to routinely be faced with, is that a flag that represents our community? Are we saying no to them, and let's invite more controversy to the town?
So your thought is, let's do it all at one time, and let's have that discussion, decide what to be inclusive of in that policy as opposed to an ad hoc.
Yeah.
Makes sense to me.
And it creates transparency as well for everyone.
Sure.
Everyone understands what the policy says.
Yeah.
For what it's worth, I do also agree that adopting a policy of some sort of flag that is, that we as council have looked at, and policy that we've reviewed, maybe that comports with similar communities, Libertyville or whoever else, I think that makes sense. Signaling to our community that we accept them, we support them, and are happy, and that's who we are. I think that's a positive thing, so.
I think this is great. So I see the consensus is to direct staff to create a policy that would basically dictate in a transparent manner the display of flags and the way we do that. Not stepping into it, as you say. Kat, the last word. Are you good? So I think that's the direction we're choosing. Last word.
See if there's any public comment.
Okay. Do we have any public comment in the room about this subject? I see none.
So I will work with Peter, prepare a policy with some options, and bring it forward at an upcoming committee of the whole meeting.
Great.
Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much. Next on our agenda is item B, a continued discussion regarding possible updates to the village affordable housing plan.
I've been trying to get this in front of you and with some somewhat success. We've gotten through on page, with the packet, it's the memorandum dated May 3rd, titled Discussion Regarding Possible Updates to the Village's Affordable Housing Plan. In the action section, the first two sections have been completed. The last three, the last two, number 3 being discuss updating the plan, and the fourth one being other possible steps, have yet to be done. And so there's a good bit of time here, so we'll see how far we can get. But to me, what I wanted to, the updated plan that's been presented, I think it was in February, was the first time we shared that with the board. And it really memorializes a number of changes to the zoning code, that the village has updated its comprehensive land use plan, a number of things that have been done already and that could benefit the village's affordable housing targets and goals. And so, and we kind of displayed the information in a little more user-friendly way. No knocks to Peter and his firm who wrote the first affordable housing plan. But, and we basically use that as our template and put in these new graphics and some other visual aids, identifying the sites throughout the community, potential sites and so forth. But anyway, this is really just memorializing what's already been done. And I think that, I think it would be an easy thing for you all to do, to recommend that this go, or to direct staff to bring this to a meeting to get, and there's some final tweaks to it, and legal hasn't reviewed it yet, but it's in pretty good shape. I think it's 95% there. But we can bring that to you all, and you can get it updated. We could share that with the Housing Authority, that the village is working on its plan, and that's really step one. So I don't know if everybody had a chance to go through it. I'm happy to answer any questions about it. That's really step one for this evening.
Do we need a motion on that?
If the consensus is clear, we'll just bring it. So we'll just finalize it, and Peter and I can work and get it done. All right, great. All right. February, here we are. All right. The last part is really, there's a lot of alternative steps can be done at this point. One of the things that has resurfaced from time to time is that the village-owned property just east of CLC Jawa and south of 176 and west of the West Terrace, that property, the village issued an RFP for senior housing many years ago and brought that forward, considered some, there were a handful of proposals submitted, worked through those, and ultimately chose not to work with a developer to develop that site as senior housing. That RFP was built over a good period of time, working with the neighborhood. It was really community-driven in a lot of ways, which resulted in some large buffers, a building envelope that was restricted, and some access point restrictions. But there were a number of interested parties, and there was possibilities there. I can tell you that I've been contacted at least twice by developers interested in doing something senior housing on that site. While that's not explicitly or directly affordable housing, a project could include affordable housing as part of it, and that the RFP could be written and structured in a way to not exclude that, and to say the village would consider, different types of diversity of housing, which has been a longstanding goal of the village board. But if that is something that is interesting to this group, we could, I would suggest that if it is, then we go back and I can share that RFP with you all, and we can sit down and take some time to do that. I think it would need to be community-driven because so much time has passed since then. There's been a lot of changeover in property owners, and I think that would be appropriate to re-involve and re-engage that neighborhood that before, if this group was interested in issuing a new RFP for that site.
I'm happy to offer some thoughts on that. Related to affordable housing, just when you read through the plan, I think we're at 40-something units at 3.8%. So if we wanted to get to the 10%, which is what the state is looking for, we really need to take a very big leap. Do I think that we're going to add 70 units of affordable housing anytime in the very near future? I think that would be a shotgun approach and probably would not be well received. But making a material improvement of 20 units, 30, maybe even 40 units, seems like a reasonable thing to do. And we're in a position where if a developer comes into our community and wants to build 100 units of affordable housing and we don't have a really good reason to say no to it, then it goes to the state to decide whether we can do it or not. We don't want to be in that position. We want to control our own fate. So to me, putting an RFP out that specifies affordable housing as being an attractive part, but not the sole part, would be a smart thing to do.
Well said.
Any comment on the board?
I agree with Steve. I think it's a great idea.
So I see this being the direction we would take, Steve. Mr. Drew, any concern?
Well, I think I wasn't here when that RFP was developed. I think the village engaged a number of consultants to go through that, an architect. After the proposals were submitted, the village did hire a consultant that specialized in senior housing. And for some of you who may not have been around, Mark was instrumental. Mark Dewart, who was, before he was even on the board, I believe, you were involved with that at the Methodist. Sure.
Mark, would
Just
you
happen
mind
to
saying
have
a
a
few
senior
words?
housing historian present.
Right, wrong, or indifferent. Mark Dewart, 454 Park Lane in Lake Bluff. At one time, we had a very active advocate group here in the village.
Methodist Church, right?
Well, it sort of began there and moved beyond. It was called, we had, in fact, I think Paul was part of this as well. We advocated for a number of groups. If you want to be historic about it, believe it or not, there was a proposal with the Franciscan Sisters for Stonebridge. And that's a long and involved process. Unfortunately, that didn't get legs. we had serious discussions on a couple of different levels and a couple of different proposals. We engaged in both advocacy and in helping to develop the RFPs for the property by Jawa. It's 10 or 11 acres. The village was going to be an active partner in that process. By design, there was going to be, the structure was senior housing focused with a significant number of what we would call more affordable units. So this was an apartment-style complex and whatnot. And that was an important part of it. Would you be able to get 30 or 40? Probably not, but you could probably make a serious dent in it. And I think we looked at this from the standpoint of not only affordability, but also social structure. And one of the underlying premises here was to be able to retain seniors in our community, because at the time, we had a lot of seniors who wanted to move, they wanted to get out of a bigger home and be able to find something that was still here, and they could still be in garden club and women's club and churches and things like that. So that social fabric piece of it was very, very important. And as I think if we look back at now at the lens through COVID, it's probably would be even more important now. I'd advise you to look very carefully at the RFP structure that was left from 2007. Trying to carefully choose my words. There were a number of points of view on the board, some which were supportive and some which were not supportive. And we created an RFP that was non-tenable at the end of the day, almost purposefully non-tenable by a couple of members of the board. And that was unfortunate. That was unfortunate. But we did work through it a lot. I think if you go back through there, you'll find a lot of substance and great places to begin and foster great discussion, I think, at least for one part of this affordability and affordability marketplace. So, thank you.
And if go ahead, please.
Well, I wanted to thank you, Mark, because you can sit, you don't have to hover. I just want to say thank you for that background. And it echoes something we've been saying for a long time, right? It continues to be this issue of families wanting to stay in Lake Bluff, multi-generational families. Lake Bluff draws that. Mm-hmm. We all love our community, and it's exciting to see, kids come back after college and want to start their own families mm-hmm. here. But there is this issue, this gap of opportunity for empty nesters and retirees mm-hmm. to stay.
Yeah.
So it continues to be an issue that we want to solve.
Yeah, it's an issue for us. It's an issue for planning ahead for our parents or grandparents, depending on what our age is here, and how we manage that.
Yeah.
And it's you've got a number of different alternatives to talk about in terms of how you might participate in this whole strategic direction. So, thank you.
Thank you. So the question I would have following that conversation is, so we clearly want to offer or to help people who would like to downsize to stay in Lake Bluff. That's one of the conversations we have. Mm-hmm. And again, there are hurdles along the way, as Mark indicated. And in some cases, we might not be able to do much, or we might have difficulties doing that. So the thing I would like to bring forward is the missing middle. Mm. How is that going to help us having different policy for land use that would basically favor creating programs where we could develop the type of dwellings that would help achieve that goal? How would that help?
Yeah, I think that is a strategy that obviously the village is going to dig down and deeper as part of the comprehensive land use plan update that's starting next month. I think it would probably be wise for the village to go down that avenue at the same time that explores other avenues. It's just that there's so few opportunities that I think if the village is truly going to be successful in creating diversified housing, that you're going to have to pull every lever available. You know, there's one other thing I thought I might add is, this is part of the greater conversation about senior housing and affordable housing, is that the Lake Forest project, that Lake Forest option that's been talked about, I actually got an update from Kathy Cerniak, the Community Development Director of Lake Forest, on Friday morning, who stated that that cottage project that they were doing just off Telegraph, right just north of the firehouse there on the west side of Lake Forest, that they kind of hit a snag. I think they put it out to bid and got numbers that were considerably larger than their budget. And so that they're going back and re-engineering those drawings, and if there's ways to scale things down and try to make it more within a line what they were looking to spend. So that's kind of been on the shelf. I don't know if that's anything different you guys would add to that. Yeah, so still out there. There's still interest from the city to pursue the project. It's just I guess continuing to, just like every other construction project, it's dealing with the outrageous pricing that everybody's seeing. So,
And Regis, do you mind if I jump in on a terminology cop for a minute?
Absolutely.
Just, and I'm sorry it's a little bit annoying, but I just wanted to clarify. So the cottages in Lake Forest are kind of capital A affordable housing. They're for people that make incomes at 60% of area mean income or less. And that's the 10% that the state wants us to get to. 10% of a capital A affordable housing, 60% of area mean income or lower. There's a nuance. You can income average to 60% by having between 40 and 80. So, but the type of affordable housing that we often talk about is really middle market, or the missing middle, or for folks here in Lake Bluff that would like to continue living in Lake Bluff. Now, many of the people that are aging out of their homes and want something smaller may not income qualify for 60% of area mean income. And that's the challenge. So I think we're interested in both. We're interested in capital A affordable housing, and we're interested in more affordable, small affordable housing, smaller footprint, smaller price, and so that in 10 years I have a place to go that's not a 3,600 square foot house. Does that make sense? Okay.
And I think that is actually a very important distinction to make, because I think we refer to both of these things at the same time. Or we think about that one, but we forget about the other. I think we should have a strategy that encompasses both of them at the same time. And what I've seen in the last 5 years, maybe, or a little bit more, is we talk about it, we're passionate and we're sincere about it, but we're not making headways. So and I think this is important. People are asking for it. Everybody is sincere about, no, I want a smaller place to move in. And how do we achieve that? And so we have a unique position right now where we're trying to do a policy for, I mean, we'll call that the missing middle, okay? And that is actually distinct from what we're doing for here, what we're discussing here. But that different discussion could actually enable our current discussion. So I know they're distinct, but they could actually be helping each other.
yeah, I mean, I think we've heard that missing middle will, given the underlying land basis cost, will not be affordable.
Yeah.
Or even, certainly not capital A affordable. Yeah, it will be market and will be probably very expensive.
Yeah.
But it'll be alternative in terms of something scaled down, you know, it won't be the 4,000, 5,000 square foot home.
So that won't put us in the 10% that they're talking about with the state at any rate.
No. But the village, if the village, for example, chooses to invest in the Lake Forest cottages to a great degree, I think Lake Forest would be open to entering into an intergovernmental agreement with the village to get credit for that, those units, which is permissible under the Housing Act, Affordable Housing Act, so. But we'll have to see, I mean, that could be a substantial, because the city's, I think, underwriting it to some degree with the sale of the property and not selling at market, and so those numbers go up a lot higher than what we've been talking about in terms of contributing to the project to get access. Sure. Not ownership.
So what we're talking about is a multi-pronged strategy to achieve our goals, again, between working with Lake Forest, working with maybe Missing Middle for achieving different goals that are gonna come to similar effects with different costs in the village, so that we can achieve what we're talking about here. Correct?
And that's in addition to like the other zoning amendments that the village has done to create the ability to have ADUs, the accessory dwelling units. And
Drew, did I miss a recirculation of the 2007 RFP? That wasn't in the packet, was it?
I did not. put that in the
I
packet.
definitely want to take a look at it and make sure we can learn and grow from it.
Yeah. It might be 125 pages long. It's
I
pretty
mean,
lengthy.
that's what I signed up for.
Yeah,
so.
yeah. I'm happy to circulate it, but with respect to Paul Lemieux, former trustee, who was counting pages for what was provided for reading. Yeah.
You know, I did speak with Val Kretschmer
Oh, did you?
at some
Yeah.
point recently.
That was the consultant the village hired.
Right, and she does market studies for all sorts of affordable housing and other type projects. And she mentioned that there's a real need for cottages, not capital A affordable cottages, but small footprint, independent cottages like the ones they have at Lake Forest Place on the periphery. And that if anybody could ever figure out the financial model to make that work, they'd fill up really quickly.
Yeah.
Interesting.
But those could be like, like the classic courtyard apartments like you see in California, Pasadena, that's what they're talking about.
So my question, not knowing as much about affordable housing as, for instance, Steve, what's the gap that we have to jump from talking about it in this capacity and actually seeing something happen? Like what, for us, needs to be done?
Well, maybe, Peter, could you give a quick reminder of the consequences of not reaching the 10%?
So there's no, it's aspirational, the statute is aspirational, with one significant consequence. If a town does not hit 10%, then the town hits 10%, then it's exempt. The town is not hit 10%, it's non-exempt. For non-exempt communities, if a developer came to the village and asked for a development for affordable housing and the village has turned that developer down, they could apply, or they could appeal that decision to the State Housing Appeal Board, which theoretically could reverse the local zoning decision.
Right.
That's the
And
consequence.
you mentioned that earlier. I'm sorry, I think I asked my question wrong. What steps need to be taken more immediately to put, I guess, that task in motion? And I mean, I think that everyone I've talked to is more immediately concerned about, or a lot of the people I've talked to are also immediately concerned about their parents or whoever being able to stay local, right? Some sort of housing that is a little bit smaller. How far are we right now from being able to actually like move in that direction? Or are we just talking about it aspirationally? Like is our ability to take steps now in the near future to like make this more viable? Is that an option?
Yeah, the answer is the village issuing an RFP is very going in that direction.
Okay.
That's like, we're taking a strong step forward to
Wonderful.
try to make this aspiration a reality.
Okay,
And that's the strongest thing, because the village is a landowner.
Okay,
You not only control the zoning, but you control the land and what you sell it for. So you could, in theory, subsidize the project by not accepting market or to achieve policy goals, which is not uncommon.
right. Okay, thank you.
Yep.
But the village does not have much land, and that's an issue.
In general, the village is largely built out, yes.
Correct.
So, and that's what the policy, that's what it's really communicating. It's like, this is gonna be hard, right? We're a
Right.
small community.
Right.
And there's not a lot of opportunities to create affordable housing. One, we're small. Two, we're really built out. So it's not easy to do versus like a community like a Naperville or somebody that has still large fields yet
Right.
that have been developed, so.
Lots of places developed, yes.
I mean, my sense is like the cottages in Lake Forest, I don't know how much they're selling that, the land basis is, but if Lake Bluff wanted to participate in that, it's gonna cost us money to participate, and maybe you get credit for 3 or 4 units. Well, you really need 70. Not that we're planning to get to 70 anytime soon.
Yeah.
It would be nicer if there was a developer that came in and on that 10 acres was gonna build independent senior housing and cottages and was going to take, 10% of the units, which maybe was 10 or 20 units, and make it capital A affordable housing. we wouldn't be paying for that, the developer, it would be part of the deal.
Okay.
So I ultimately think that that would be a better strategy for the village.
More
not
efficient, yeah.
More efficient anyways.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Okay, where should we go from here?
So I will recirculate the RFP.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
And I can start working to bring that back as well to a committee of the whole and kind of work through here. See if we were going to update it based off what's known today. And I can bring that forward for a conversation with you all.
Thank you. I think this is great, and I'm interested to read that 2007 policy to see where we came short and where we can basically open the policy to see how we can get to a result we could achieve, affordable or smaller housing availability in the village of Lake Bluff.
Age targeted, you know,
Yes.
whatever, yeah.
Yep. So thank you very much.
Of course.
And are there any more comments in the audience? Mark? Thank you very much. And so that will conclude our committee of the whole. Could I please have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Thank you. And we're adjourned. Thank you very much.
All
And
right.
we'll reconvene in about 15 minutes for our standard meeting.
Just to be able to do that, I'm sorry,